I actually hated how I looked and I had no confidence. So I've had to then naturally remold myself back into the person that I was, and that's taken a while. But bodybuilding for me, as much as I love the process of physique development, it took everything out of me just for that one objective to turn pro.
How do you know when it's the right time to quit?
When you
Ben, you've spoken a lot about the transition away from football, away from bodybuilding, and how that kind of means that maybe there's elements of loss of identity. So, have you had any specific mindset shifts or mindset work that have helped you go through those periods where you feel like you've lost who you knew yourself as?
Yeah, I think especially over the last year has been the biggest mindset shift since stepping back from bodybuilding, where I was known as a coach and a lifestyle person who created content around the life that he lived, of all of a sudden being a fully ingrained bodybuilder. I think when I met you, I was a big, not bodybuilding obsessed, but that was my identity. When's Ben competing? Like, when is he going to turn pro? And then all of a sudden there's no goal. So I feel like I've had to re-identify myself and reaffirm myself in the industry as I am a coach and a leading coach in the industry. And that has come with almost like a little bit of, I've had to reinstill self-belief that that was my identity before bodybuilding. And it's not been easy really, because with content creation, everything as a bodybuilder was so easy. 8 weeks out, 9 weeks out, or this is the food that I eat. Now nobody really cares. It's more like, well, what's Ben doing with his life, his business, his clients? So it's a lot harder now and there's a lot more to think about. But I think over the last 10 months in particular, since stepping back, that's probably the most I've had to really think about my message as a person and what I represent, and ensure that the values stay true to what I've started off on.
Is that something that you did by yourself, or did you seek any external help, someone to literally guide you through those questions, like hold up a mirror for you?
Always by myself. And it always has been, really. I think since stepping back, it's naturally become easier. And a lot of people have said through my content, I seem a lot happier, because I think I actually remember when I first met you and I was saying to you, I'd not done with bodybuilding. And I was saying to you, I'm going to finish these shows and I'm done.
Yeah, you were
And
so tapped out.
I think you were saying, but how are you going to quit when the goal's so big? And I think it was just because I wasn't happy, and now I'm stepping back, and I have stepped back. I think naturally because I'm happier, it's just portrayed a lot better in the content. But I've never sought advice. I've just had to re-identify myself to my true happiness, and I think that's took time.
Yeah, of course it's going to take time, especially when you have to become someone different for that goal. To turn pro, which is what you were pursuing for years, you had to literally mold yourself into someone else. And so what did it feel like day to day when you kind of knew, like, deep down it didn't feel good? Like, you spoke about, you'd walk into a room, people would look at you and be like, oh, you're so big. But most guys would be buzzing to hear that.
Yeah, and that's the key word, what you just said. Mold myself. I actually molded myself into a bodybuilder. It never came natural. I didn't fully enjoy the process, the phases you had to go through. And I think that's why I struggled mentally, because growing up, I'd always been told, you look good. Like, I could perform good and I felt good. I'd go out for a meal and put a nice outfit on, and I liked how I looked. And for the first time in my life, and it's going to sound quite raw, but I actually hated how I looked and I had no confidence. So I've had to then naturally remold myself back into the person that I was, and that's taken a while. But bodybuilding for me, as much as I love the process of physique development, it took everything out of me just for that one objective to turn pro.
How do you know when it's the right time to quit?
When you're concerned around your health, so taking performing enhancing drugs at the level you need to turn pro was on my mind constantly, reviewing blood work, constant anxiety around that element and managing that through the right supplementation, knowing the longer you stay in the game, the increased risk. And I think when you just generally are waking up every day feeling unfulfilled, like somebody said to me literally last week, how do you get up at 5 o'clock and just repeat that 7 days a week? And it's because I've got a burning desire to progress my business. That's what gets me up at 5 a.m. and that's what's going to continue to get me up at 5 a.m. Bodybuilding, I used to roll out of bed in the off season at 8:30, exhausted. And on prep, I couldn't get out of bed. So business just didn't really move. And I think because I became so unfulfilled in business because of what bodybuilding was doing, I wasn't progressing in any element other than physique. My mindset was going down. My business was staying where it was. The people around me certainly weren't happy because they had to deal with that mental, let's say, trauma from me because I was so unhappy in myself and what I represented. So I feel every part of my life had taken a backward step just for one goal. And I think 2 years of that, I was like, I'm done.
People listening might be curious about like why that pursuit of turning pro was so important to you though, because you sacrificed so much for it and you were like very much so aware that maybe you weren't the nicest person to be around.
Yeah.
You weren't pursuing everything or all of that energy into business. But why did turning pro mean so much?
I think for me, I competed when I was 21, 22, 23. COVID hit and I was faced with no option to bodybuild really. And the judges' feedback was, you need 5-6 kilogram of muscle and need to take steroids. So it was an easy door to close. I was like, well, I'm never going to do that. But it was like a little itch that I needed to scratch. And every time I was in the gym, in particular bodybuilding gyms, people was like, you need to go again. And it was just always there in the back of my mind. And I'm always one of those, I don't like what ifs. Like, what if you didn't do that cardio? What if you missed that meal? So I went again. I moved to Dubai. I was training with the best bodybuilders in the world, the best IFBB pros. And I thought, right, the circle fits, the environment fits, it's a time to go again. But I actually didn't realize, and I think a lot of bodybuilders who listen to this will realize what it takes from you. Because previously at 21, 22, 23, it was complimenting me. I still looked like a lifestyle person. I wasn't taking steroids. It wasn't taking over my life. It was like a little hobby. But to be a pro, it's a job and it's a full-time job. And I don't think I realized that transition of just stepping on stage once versus actually trying to make it a career and become an actual pro. And I think the two was completely different. So it was two different experiences.
Yeah, it's when you set your eyes on a goal and then you go through that process and you realize it does not align with your values whatsoever. And then it's that choice of pivot, quit, the raw transparency there of what it feels like to be putting your health at risk in pursuit of that physique development goal and to get that title as pro. What people won't hear about though is afterwards, coming off cycle, like what was the reality of how you felt?
It was quite rough, a lot rougher than what I thought because I'll be honest, I was taking a lower end for what a bodybuilder would take, but it was still upper end for generally what I wanted to take in terms of risk. A few compounds mixed in and I had my final show. So got into overalls, missed out on the pro card by a point twice. And if you think of it, people will probably look at that and think, what a short-sighted individual he is. Like, he could have gone again and again. But I was on prep 20 weeks in the end. So that's blasting for 20 weeks, which again is not advised. And I think it got to a point where when I came off, I did it incorrectly. I should have gone from a blast onto a cruise, onto a TRT. But because I wanted the muscle off so quickly, and I wanted the look to change so dramatically, I just stopped. Went completely cold turkey and just stopped taking everything. And I waited 4 weeks to do my bloods. And in that period of 4 weeks, I got acne all over my forehead, all over my back. I've never had spots. During the full cycle, I never had a single spot. And because my hormones had gone from a peak physiological range to completely baselined, my body just went into shutdown. So training, I remember, and this will always stick in my mind, I hated training to the point where I joined a new gym. I went to 7, left Benoos, went into the gym to try and push, and I ran a 10K instead. I'd never ran a 10K. It was the most painful thing I've ever done. I couldn't run for 2 weeks after, but that was the extremes of how much I didn't want to train.
Why did you feel that complete dissatisfaction with training at that point in time?
I think because I knew every time I trained, I was moving one step further away from the person that I wanted to look like.
Wow.
That's how much I hated how I looked. And I had photos, and I still look at photos today of the size of my neck, like what I looked like in clothes. And I remember sitting with my mum, and my mum was fully aware of what I was doing. I was putting it on socials and YouTube. And I used to say, Mum, can you like see this muscle on my neck? And she'd be like, no, what are you on about? And now I showed her the photo, and there was a photo with me having a selfie with my cat, and you can see the muscle on my neck here. And everybody looks different on steroids, but for me, it was just a look that I couldn't continue. So every time I trained and trained weights, I was like, well, I'm going against what I want to look like. So I just thought in my head, if I don't do it, I'm going to get to where I am quicker. And I think this is where the next journey then came. I was like, right, fitness, endurance, I'm not going to have to lift weights as much. I'm going to be in a deficit. But that's the other flip side. I was in a calorie deficit while coming off anabolics. And even though I know all of this, mentally as I was in a position to go against it because of how I wanted to look and feel day to day. So I was eating pretty much similar food set up to prep. That wasn't doing hormones any good. I was then on PCT 4 weeks after, Clomid, HCG, mentally putting me in the bin. All while still trying to produce content, rebuild the business. So it was when I look back on reflection, I don't quite realise the damage it was doing, but now I look and think, I felt sorry for myself, actually.
That's really tough to have to go through. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like from what you've described there that you were completely open and honest about how shit you were feeling.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is because a lot of people who do follow me will look at that physique and think, well, I want it. I'm willing to take what he has. And as well as that, I didn't really want to be too honest because I feel like I was trying to be happy that the mission was complete, when in truth, I was gutted I missed the goal. Like that now, especially coming into competitive season, I did a podcast around would I ever go back on stage a few weeks ago, and I wouldn't, but this time of the season where people are stepping on stage and the guys who I beat are all pro now. So I live with that, and it's almost like, what would that pro card have got me? And how I sleep better at night is nothing changes when you turn pro.
Absolutely not. You having that title now, it wouldn't change that vision, that mission, everything that you bring to the industry. And you can live comfortably with that. Also knowing now that you're in much better health. So just for, again, honesty, how are your health markers now compared to when you finished competing?
So I ran a full PCT. Callum Pro Coach helped me with that. So like 12 weeks. And I didn't bounce back. So my luteinizing hormone was 0.04 above. So it was back in range, but in terms of operating, really on the below marker. And then my testosterone levels were at 8 nanomole. So that's when I had to start eating. And I almost knew that, and my diet's good. You know, I live a healthy lifestyle. I wasn't eating any bad food, but I just wasn't eating enough of it. So I put my dietary fats up, and then I retested. I ran another course of PCT, a little bit more aggressive this time over a shorter window, and did bounce my luteinizing hormone back up to where it should have been, and my FSH was fine, and testosterone came back up to 18. So I am fully recovered now, which is good, but in transparency, that was 8 months. So only 2 months ago.
You've been suffering for a long time.
Yeah. Just for the IFBB pro status, where I was going to quit anyway if I turned pro. Or even worse, with you, everybody knows how I am, I'd have probably continued potentially and gone further down a rabbit hole with my mental health. And this is why I resonate with bodybuilders so much who feel isolated and feel lonely, because it is extremely lonely and isolating. And they feel they've almost got to finish the mission. But you don't need to finish a mission. Like, who are you proving it to? If you're not happy in any journey, like you said, you've got to be able to pivot and actually stand with your chest proud and say, it wasn't for me.
I think with all bodybuilders, they have to ask themselves, what's the finish line? Is it the Olympia? Like, is that the finish line?
Yeah.
Because we all know that there's only a very, very select few people ever on this planet that will get that. But we've seen it, people that will then turn pro and they just keep going and going and going. And you think, but what void is that trying to fill? Is that something you notice a lot in the bodybuilding community?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel it does drive you into a delusional state where all you do is you look in the mirror and you compare yourself to the person you're going to be competing against, and you convince yourself you're better. And if you're not better, you'll be better next year. So it's just a competition against yourself and the people who are on the circuit. And it's not a healthy mindset. And you'll hear a lot of bodybuilders say it is lonely and you've got to be relentless. But if you're relentless with the wrong genetics, and unfortunately you're going to be relentless for the rest of your life and not really get anywhere.
And damage your health whilst you're at it.
And I realized I have good genetics, but I didn't have the genetics of some people. And that's where I think you've got to look in the mirror sometimes and say, look, I can try and get to the Olympia, but even if you get to the Olympia, it's not a lottery win. You're not going to earn money off it. It's going to cost you a fortune. So I think for me, it was looking at the risk to reward ratio, happiness, mental health, business, the people around me. And when I look at it like that, it was the easiest decision I've ever made.
That makes me very happy to hear. What does life look like in those elements now? Let's say business, social life, relationships back then compared to now, because you've also spoken about before, like you moved to Dubai, you didn't even see any of it for the first couple of years you were here.
Yeah. So business moved 30% within 6 months, believe it or not. So, and it had not moved for 2 years. And I became delusional to that because I chose to ignore it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And what did you deduce that was from?
I think it was from me becoming relatable to my audience again. The bodybuilding pool's this big, the lifestyle pool, me being in Dubai at a nice beach club promoting how you can eat a balanced, healthy diet versus my 400 gram of cream of rice times 3. A lot more people are going to want to watch that versus the alternative. And relationships are a lot better. I've been to more restaurants in 6 months than what I went to in 2 years. Social life is a lot better. And I thought I'd come out and I'd be like a kid in a candy shop wanting to do everything. But when I realised that I've got years to do it, I've just lived a normal life, but I've worked a lot harder on my staff, the team cohesion, the actual values and the message of New Gen, because I think it became a little bit masked with my journey. Oh, Ben's a bodybuilder, we only attract bodybuilders. So now it is to empower men to feel physically and emotionally and mentally stable, but also develop from a physique standpoint and impact their lives positively. And as bodybuilders, I know some people can do that, but I couldn't. So it's almost using my experience from my journey to hopefully benefit everybody.
Absolutely. It's difficult to do, to try and say, do as I say to someone when you do something completely different. It's really difficult to be that inspiration for them. I'm curious, transitioning away from the bodybuilding industry, or at least maybe that community as tight-knit as it was before, is there anything that you miss about it?
I think that pause answers it, firstly. I miss being on a journey with my physique. I take my check-in shots now and I'm a lot happier. But I do miss that constant repetition of input and output. What you're putting in the gym, you see in your physique. But all I've done is just translated the energy of input into the gym, posing practice, into now business, family, relationships. And the return has been a lot more, let's say, fruitful.
Yeah, far more fulfilling. The business that you have, New Gen Coaching, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, lifestyle transformation companies for men. You work with a lot of young men. What battles are young men facing, silent battles that maybe not everybody knows about, that you hear about firsthand?
I think the battle that stands out to me, and I use this saying a lot, is comparison is the thief for joy. And I think a lot of young men in particular are spending far too much time looking sideways and focusing on what their friends are doing or what their favorite influencer is doing and where they should be in life. And what we try and do different at New Gen is almost understand the psychology of the individual. Because if you know that, then you can manage them. And I always say coaching is much more than just physique development. Here's your diet and here's your training program. It's people management, and it's actually getting them to think bigger. So we'll create a roadmap and a vision board of where they want to get to, and we'll provide the tools of how they're going to get there. And what I find that does is completely remove that element of, look at this guy doing this, because they're then on a mission. And that's why you'll often hear me talk around, I'm on a mission because my clients are on a mission. And they know that if they follow the script that we write, we're going to completely change their life. And if they don't, nothing will happen. They'll keep looking sideways. And I think for me, growing up, that's what I chose to do. I never looked sideways at what other people was doing. I knew where I wanted to be, and I invested in people to get me to where I wanted to get to. And it fast-tracked me. And I feel like that's why we attract such a large pool of individuals, because me, the coaches and the team, we're just normal people. But we've been able to create lives for ourselves that people would dream of through just relentless hard work, consistency and resilience.
It's fantastic that you're inspiring them in the right direction. And that leads me to ask, did you have any inspirations? You mentioned you invested into yourself, perhaps certain mentors along your journey, or did you feel very much so like, no, I know where I'm headed inside and I'm going to follow that trajectory?
I feel I knew exactly where I wanted to be. I've used mentors with business as inspiration, more as ideas boards of, right, they've built an amazing business, they've stayed true to the values. But in terms of work rate, I've always put that down to myself. And I don't think you can teach work rate. I see so many people now feeling they need to travel, and they might look at yourself and I living in Dubai and thinking, I need to come to Dubai to grow my business. And I will always say, I grew a very successful business out of my bedroom, working off my bed, off on a tiny desk in the kitchen. All you need is a laptop and an internet connection. But I think the younger generation today feel, I need a trip to Dubai to inspire me. Your vision's not big enough and you're not thinking big enough, unfortunately.
It's so interesting because I just had flashbacks when you said that, like working off of like your bed with your laptop. And I remember like, I'm trying to record check-ins or like take a sales call. Like, can I have the bedroom when it's free? And literally, as you say, like in lockdown, trying to build this business. And I know for me, like it was from complete survival. I was like, I cannot work this corporate job. I can't be in this lifestyle. I have got, like, the world is bigger. Were you driven from something where you felt like it was survival mode, like you needed more?
I think for me, it was the pain of the ordinary life that I'd lived for such a long period of time. And growing up, you mentioned football. I think because of how much I gave to football and how little I got back in the end, it left me in a position where I'd almost built this lifestyle up in my head that I knew I was going to live, and it didn't happen because I weren't a professional footballer. So unlike most young guys, I didn't really sulk. I just put my attention elsewhere. So I looked at what football taught me, and it was to eat a balanced nutrition at the level I was playing at, performance nutrition to benefit the game. And I broke it down and I understood it. And I then started to use it to change physiques. And when I actually started coaching, it's crazy to think this. There was Martin Winston, Cal Pro coach, Cuba, AJ Morris and Jace, and Christian Chapman with Joe Physique Collective. That's how many coaches there were when I started coaching. And I think people look at me and think I'm probably a lot younger than what I am. But it was like I saw what those guys were doing and I was inspired by them. And I was looking at the work rate on social media, the client results. And it was never the life that I wanted to live. I'm just driven by progress. And when I was seeing clients progress, it was like an addiction to me. And that's what's always been the bottleneck to my business, is me now. Because I love seeing individuals progress. And when I see someone with a problem and I know I've got the solution for it, I can't help but get involved. So I feel it was with a life, it wasn't pain. It was almost like obsession with helping people, which then led to the business, which then led to where we're at today.
It's much easier when your work rate is fueled by pure passion instead of coming from a place of lack where, like you said, some of these young guys might be seeing this beautiful life, but it's because they want to look like they have more, or because it's maybe like power, ego, but it's not like from the heart.
Yeah. And I think you quickly get found out in our industry. And like you said, you was in a corporate background, as was I. And I always use this little reference, but when I worked as a project manager, I'd look at the clock quite a lot. I thought I loved that job, but I'd be like, 3:15, a few more hours, I'll get another break, a coffee, and then we'll be done. Whereas with coaching, you will know, like, even today, 8-9 years in the industry, I've got a call at 10 o'clock tonight. And people don't see that. They know we work hard, but I think they'll see us at a beach club on a Friday or a Saturday or maybe a Sunday, once every blue moon for me, and more than likely you. And they think that's the life I want to live. But when you're actually on a mission to progress and build a business, a legacy, and have an impact on the industry, you need to get used to sitting behind a computer screen for 12 hours.
I'm here wearing fake tan because I haven't seen the sun in God knows how long.
Yeah.
And we're in Dubai, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't really use the sunbeds, but I knew I was filming a YouTube today and I knew I was on this podcast. I was like, I look a little bit pasty. Didn't use a sunbed, but I used it as like a tinted moisturiser on my face last night. I was like, that's going to have to do.
That's our secrets of how hard we work then. That's the first thing we said when we walked in. How are you? You okay? Oh, been working non-stop.
Putting fires out. And it is that. I think like coaching is much more than just coaching now, isn't it? Especially like running businesses, people management. And it's amazing, but I'm not afraid to admit that it comes with its challenges mentally.
And this is something I'm really interested to know. You have said, you know, you're a bit of an introvert. You're not naturally like someone that gets charged by giving a lot of energy, perhaps in social situations. How do you then get yourself to the point where you've built up this social media following and you're a leader? You've got to show up for your team and your clients every single day.
I speak to people at school and they're in actual disbelief of what I've done. Because remember when you used to have to read out at class and you'd get a sentence each, I would go cherry red and be the most embarrassed person ever. And I realised from a young age that was quite a big problem. So all I've done is every single year, I set myself a goal to do something that feels uncomfortable. So the thought of publicly speaking gave me sleepless nights to a point where I did my first public speaking event the night before I didn't sleep, not a single minute. And it was my own event. And I believe if you've got something and you are introverted and you think, oh, I can't do that, you've got to build up the confidence somehow or the self-belief that you've got to do it. And I didn't look at it as, oh, I might do that. I looked at it as, I've got to do that. But you've got to build your way up to that. I started with online webinars. Then I started with obviously publicly speaking. And being a leader doesn't come naturally to me, but it's something that again was a weakness. And I isolated it and thought, in order to build a brand, I need to build a personal brand. And in order to be a leader, I need to build a team. So I just scaled the business to a point where I had no other option than to do that.
Forced evolution. You've got to put yourself in those situations, and before you know it, what you were shaking in your boots to do at one point, it just feels like water off a duck's back, like so easy. And that's something that happens with maturing as a business owner, but definitely that then drives me to want to know what is actually that mission, because you talk about, you know, you get up at 5 a.m, you'll force yourself through sleepless nights so that you can get better. But what's the mission?
It's constant progression. That's all it is. People will say, what's a financial goal? And I worked with a mentor recently, said, what's a financial goal next year? I said, I ain't got one. There's one metric in my business that I look at: clients in, clients out. What's the total client numbers? That's all I need to know, because all I know then is a business has scaled and we've got more people to have more of an impact on. And I think the mission, if I actually strip it back, is legacy. It's to be remembered in the industry for having a positive impact and being somebody who gave a single fuck about the clients. And people see me as an influencer. They see me as somebody who produces YouTubes. But when you strip it back, I'm a coach at heart. And that's where my true values and my passion is. And that's why I say the bottleneck to my business is me, because I love to help people. I love to inspire people. And I know through the pain that I've been on, I can do that. So I often ask myself, when will the mission stop? And I don't actually know. I don't know why I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I don't know why I put myself through the sleepless nights. But if I don't, I feel unfulfilled and I feel lost.
It's so interesting that you've identified that, because I think back to maybe around Christmas time, I was feeling a bit disconnected from myself. And I wrote a list of what are the actions that I do when I'm most happy. And it's, I wake up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
I read for at least half an hour a day. I finish my final meal by 7 p.m. so I don't wake up feeling bloated. I wrote down all of these things. And actually, like, you're just wired in some way to do what other people consider as hard.
Yeah.
But for maybe us, where we have similar things that we get fulfillment from, we actually find it hard not to do those things.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head, and I think that's so valuable. the task you did in terms of writing down what makes you happy. Because you mentioned reading 30 minutes a day, you love it. Because of the modern world we live in today, I feel entitled to read. I've never been a good reader. So I set a goal to read books at the start of the year, 10 pages a day, and I'm failing miserably. I've read 30 pages so far this year, so that tells me 3 days I've done. And I think I look back at it, and reading doesn't make me happy. So maybe that's why I'm not good at it. But what does make me happy is, like you said, getting up at 5, arriving in the gym at 6 a.m. every single morning. If I'm late, it frustrates me. Starting work at 8 a.m. every single morning. If I'm late, it frustrates me. And I think what you've got to do in life is collect as many skills that make you happy and fulfilled as possible, and do them as frequently as possible to be as successful as possible.
This is definitely the mindset of someone, though, that has consistent progression as what brings them joy. There's going to be some people listening to this that cannot relate.
Yeah.
They just want, maybe they feel like trapped in this dopamine chase where they find themselves just wanting anything that is instantly making them feel good, whether it's shit food, doom scrolling, any addictions, yet they can see that on the other side it looks green, like when you work hard, when you put in a good shift, when you find your purpose. What advice do you have to anyone who is lost in their purpose or their sense of fulfillment, maybe where they can begin to find something that drives a healthier pursuit of feeling happy instead of these quick fixes?
Yeah, I think if you're lost, you've not found what gets you ticking. Like, you was lost in your corporate job, as was I. Now we're so fulfilled in our businesses that we're on this mission to progress. And I think if you're spending time scrolling, watching pointless shit on TV every evening, and you're not happy doing that, then you need to utilize that time to operate and do something that's going to be more effective, where you might get that return on your investment. I see a lot of people in Dubai do it, and everybody in Dubai is tuned in a different way, aren't they? They're up, they're working, they're relentless. It's not a case of what you're doing this weekend. It's a case of how much money you're earning.
Always.
And I feel like I have a friendship group for everything, and it's quite selfish. If I want to get smashed on a weekend, I know who to call. If I want to learn something new, I know who to call. If I want to talk coaching, I know who to call. If I want to talk business. And if you're not putting yourself in those environments and you feel lost, you need to have the conversations with the right people. And I feel like that's why Dubai is one of the best places in the world, because you open yourself up to that. Whereas I'm from a small town in Rotherham, it is quite a negative mindset. I love Rotherham, but I love Rotherham because it's peaceful, it's relaxed, I can switch off, but I love it for a week. And I feel with the people who are lost in life, they need to set some goals. Because I think without goals, whether that's physique development, business, family, financial, you're just cruising. And if you're cruising and you don't want to cruise and you're not working towards anything, you're just going to continue to cruise, and then you'll blink and you'll be too late.
Yeah, it's that hamster wheel of just trying to find fun. And there are some people out here that are like guilty of being trapped on that hamster wheel, getting sucked into the Dubai lifestyle. And before you know it, they're either going home or they're stuck here and they're like, actually, like, this life isn't making me fulfilled. Everything that's around me isn't making me fulfilled, but perhaps it's what they've been leaning into. You have to be disciplined and be able to set boundaries to lean into the things that you know are going to serve you best.
Yeah.
So where do you feel like you've had to set the most boundaries to be able to show up and do what you do religiously every day?
Routine, hands down. And that's what I'll preach to every single client. Without routine, you will become unfulfilled and you will become agitated. And I think I come from a small town where drinking culture is completely normal. Getting wrecked on a weekend, working a 9-5 is completely normal. Having a kid at 23, 24 is completely normal. So when people probably mention my name in my hometown, it's common that, oh, Ben's doing well. But really, I'm just doing okay in Dubai. And I think with people who reference a question again, because I feel like I had a really good point.
So where do you need to set boundaries to show up and do what you need to do?
So one of my goals, and this was written on my to-do list 4 years ago, was saying no to things that don't align with a vision. I used to always be a people pleaser. So my friends would be like, "You're coming out this weekend." I'd do it even if I wouldn't wanted to. And the boundaries that I've had to set have been to literally remove anything that moves me further away from that goal. So with bodybuilding, that was drinking, it was eating off plan. With business, I have certain boundaries where, and I think this will be valuable for online coaches, because in the coaching culture today, it's work, 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 work. I don't have any days off. I've done 3 months without a day off. I've done all that. I have every Saturday off now. It might not be a full Saturday, but the morning I get up, I take my dog on a walk, I have a coffee, I watch Sky Sports News without fail. That's enough for me, because I know that I can operate 100% for 6 days, 6.5 days a week. But you've got to be able to put the hours in and be efficient within those hours. Otherwise, you're just working on that hamster wheel. But the boundaries I've had to set is just to be absolutely ruthless with my routine.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's similar to something that I said to myself, you know, like the ins and outs, what's in 2025 and what's out.
Yeah.
And I wrote my list, me and my list, I love them. And one of them was allowing other people's complacency to hold me back.
Yeah.
So whether that's team members, whether that's people in my life, relationships, and that prompts me to ask, who do you have to thank in your life for supporting you to getting you to this point?
There'll be very few. For me, what's that saying where you're successful and everybody cheers, but while you're on a mission, nobody's there? You know what I mean?
It's like everybody, like no one's cheering you on for the climb,
Yeah.
but when you're at the top, everyone's clapping you.
Yeah. So I'm at that point, and I have been for some time, where people actually look at me and think you need to slow down. Like my mum would check in and say, "You're gonna have a day off this week, or you're gonna relax." And my mum's always supported me, and my dad has. But in recent years, I've actually been like, "Are you ever gonna slow down?" So I've had to convince them I am, when in actual fact I'm not.
Let's hope they're not listening.
Yeah. But I would say Claudia, my girlfriend, keeps me grounded. She realizes what I want, because she joined the circle really when I had nothing. And she's seen the growth, and she respects the time that needs to be put in to continue to see that growth. And I've helped her scale a business now really successfully, from routine, from discipline, from actually doing the same shit day in, day out. And she didn't believe me at first. And it's just repetition. It's like going to the gym. You keep showing up, putting the work in, training hard, being consistent. And I would say my friendship group have been very supportive. But they've also, in recent years, not been hesitant to call me boring. I missed a ski trip in January, so I paid for it, £2,500. I was determined to go on it. January was really quiet for New Gen. It was like, but we ran an offer in December, and I just didn't go. And it was 2 of my best friends, but 30ths. And I just said, look, business in a place now where I just need to get my head down, need to make this sacrifice, and I'm not going to go. And it was like, you know, when you've upset your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel the support there. But that's what I mean with, you've got to be ruthless to get to where you want to get to. And you will realize that your circle, when I was 21, 22, was massive. 30 friends, biggest group chat going. Probably got a circle of like 3 or 4 people currently.
It's so good to hear that Claudia's been with you throughout the whole journey, especially considering that you went through a period where you said like you didn't really like yourself or how you were showing up, and you had such low confidence. What role did she play in supporting you there?
I think because she saw me every day, she didn't see the change.
Really?
She was like, you're not getting too much bigger. But now when we look back at photos, she jokes and says, God, can't believe I stuck around.
No, she doesn't.
Because, like, you are
savage.
Kidding. Yeah. But even through, like, you will know, building a business, it is putting fires out, and you will manage that in different ways. Some people are calm and collective, and I've not been over the years. I have been ruthless, and I've had to go for many walks on my own, and look, I need to cool off. And you've got to have a partner in your life who actually benefits it, who respects it, but also adds value, and it's a two-way pathway. And I do now, looking back, I think if you'd have asked me this a few years ago, I'd have said a completely potential different answer. But I think without her, I would have, definitely struggled to be where I am, because I don't have that noise of Instagram DMs from girls or going out on a weekend. I've just had a stable base and a very stable relationship throughout it.
Yeah. I've heard a couple of other very successful male entrepreneurs say that their female partners ground them. I want to kind of know what that means. Like, what does being grounded mean? Does it mean like actually being told like, hey, can you like log off so we can go and spend some time together? What does it mean?
It's actually quite the opposite. I'll run away with ideas, and I'm a fast implementer. Somebody tells me something, I'll implement it. Sometimes that's not great. Sometimes it's amazing. And now I use Claudia as my ideas board, and she's just straight up. And it's like Marbella. We're going to launch a big challenge next week around a Marbella shred. And I was looking at this massive, massive villa. I was like, I'll get every client in this. She just turns around and she's like, for what? Like, you don't need every client in your villa, Ben. Like, you're going to do a group photo shoot. And I'm like, maybe I don't. She just gives me something to think about. And whether we do that or not, I'm not too sure. But if that was me, I'm a fast actor. But like, right, get that villa booked. It's done without any actual thought process behind it. And I feel she slows me down, and she's like, no, you need to think about this. And I do. And 9 times out of 10, I reverse that idea. So I'd say that's how she keeps me grounded.
That's so interesting, because that's another trait that I've noticed through many conversations with, as I say, successful male entrepreneurs, is that they're quite impulsive, that they think of something and they're like, this is a great idea, I'm going to go do this right away. So is that one of your natural traits?
Yeah, if somebody, it depends who it is, but if it's often my idea, it gets implemented within seconds. If it's a mentor's idea, I always sit on it, but I often get carried away in the moment. So if we have a really productive meeting and they're like, we're going to do this and that, I'm like, right, let's do this now. Let's go and implement this. And sometimes it's not always the right thing to do. And that's where I personally believe you've got to have someone by your side who, like you said, a lot of male entrepreneurs will have that rock. And I would say Claudia's that, because it's just allowed me to make the right decisions, not get ahead of myself, not think too big. And that's one thing that I do. I always preach thinking big, but I think there's thinking realistic as well.
It's especially something that I picked up on when you said, before we started recording, we were talking about our values, how we want our businesses to look. Everyone else who might be doing well, and whether you see the revenue, you hear the number of clients, we're talking coaching specifically, none of that really matters if you're building a business that you feel like misaligned with. Because if you're completely pulled out of the business, but as you said, you love being in it, you won't be fulfilled. If you're having incredibly high revenue some months, but actually it's very volatile, you're not going to be fulfilled. How long has it taken you to get to the point where you actually think, no, I need to do what's right for me, what feels right inside?
I think it's taken me a lot of time and a lot of money, a lot of investments into mentors where, because I look up to them and what they've built, I think it's the right thing to do. But as you will know, building a business, you learn on the job and you learn through time and experience. And I would say over the last 2 years in particular, I've learned what is truly right for New Gen, the people within it and me. And it's like I said to you earlier, a lot of businesses, in particular, a lot of coaching businesses are charging up front. That's amazing. If you can get an upfront package, you're tying somebody in, you can't invest promise money. But for us, we run off monthly recurring revenue and it works. We have an offer if you want to pay up front, but every mentor in the industry at the minute recommends upfront packages because that benefits them in terms of their marketing strategy. This client hit X months. And it's easy to fall in that trap, especially when you have conversations with coaches. I've hit this month, I've done this month, but I'd rather have a stable business with stable monthly recurring revenue where I can invest money safely into people, into projects, into mentors, than just chase a target every single month and become unfulfilled because I keep missing that target. And I think for me, that allows me to be a better business owner. It makes me a nightmare for every mentor, but it makes me a happier business owner and a better one, a better leader, because I know what I'm trying to do and I know what mission I'm on.
I think a lot of other coaches or people who run similar business models will benefit from hearing that, because maybe when you're not quite up there and you're looking up at the pinnacle of the mountain and you see everyone having a party up there, you're like, I want to be up there.
Yeah.
But you do not know what is behind their sign of success. You do not know the volatility or how difficult it might be or inconsistent. And that's the thing, like social media really is just the highlight reel.
Yeah. And one thing that always stays with me is when I invested in a coach for the first time, I didn't have much money and I could have never paid a package. But I got on a monthly recurring revenue, paid the coach, and I got him his best result, which generated him probably 50 clients and built him a business. That always sticks with me. And I always ask my staff inside, what would you rather do? And that often determines what we'll then do if I agree with it. And I think that's why we've got such a good cohesion. But you're right in what you say. I think the industry now is glamorized around the financials. But for me, I'd rather be skint and happy than rich and miserable.
Can I get an amen? Like 100%. And it's surprised me and my circle of friends how long it's taken us to realize that, especially again, just those who are more prone to like working non-stop, like they have this incessant drive that they get to the point where they're like, oh, actually, like, what am I working so hard for when I never see daylight?
Yeah.
It like just one day you think I'm not living. So what for you is the living that you're looking forward to doing over the next year?
I think it's having the balance now, which I've never had. Enjoying that Saturday, Sky Sports, coffee, walking the dog, as boring as that is. I've seen a lot of the world, but that's one thing that I want to do. I actually listened to a podcast saying you should work in sprints. Every 12 week, book a little staycation. So that's what I've set my calendar up to.
I listened to that one too.
Yeah.
Can't remember which one that was.
I'm trying to think which one it was, but it was a really good one.
I think it was Sahil Bloom with Chris Williamson.
Yeah.
And he had said, and it makes perfect sense because business operates in seasons.
Yeah.
Like we'll have our busy seasons. So if we can get our head down for 12 weeks and work really hard, why the hell not?
Yeah.
And then after that, we can just book a holiday and have a great time.
Yeah. And when I go on those little staycations, I did one to Abu Dhabi and I'm on the beach just thinking free. I get so creative with my ideas. And I know that's downtime and you shouldn't be potentially thinking like that, but that's just the way my brain's tuned. And I come away and I'm like, wow, I needed that. And I think in the industry that we're in today, you need to bring good energy and you need to be upbeat for your clients, know when to initiate a rocket if they're not performing. And for me, I just know when I've got something to work towards where I take a little step back, I enjoy the fruits of my labour in a nice hotel with some nice food. I think that just gets me ticking.
Yeah, because we're, as business owners, we're not meant to be as such like yes, we're meant to be the doers, but we're where the ideas come from. And if we have no space for ideas, nothing actually moves forwards. I find that we have the best next following week, where there's weeks where maybe I'll have a little bit more time and I'm like, oh, let's do this. Let's do this strategy.
Yeah. And this is, I'm sure, how the podcast came around for you, where you thought, right, this is a great idea. And what did I say to you before this? I'd love to do a podcast. I just haven't got the time. And as business owners, I think it's okay to not be perfect and not have everything worked out at the minute. And people might look at me and listen to this podcast and think, wow, like he's got everything worked out, X, Y, and Z, but I still don't have enough time to be as creative as I would like or to think on the business as much. I don't know how you feel with that.
Honestly, I'm in the trenches. Like I do not have much time to be creative. And it sucks because I love those days where I have free think space. I think of ideas, marketing strategies, podcast ideas, all of that comes. But also if there's too much of that, there's this incessant, you should be doing more. I don't think there's ever an answer.
No. And I don't know if you get the same feeling, but when I think like that, I almost get an urge of like, I need to do it now. And that can again be that behavior of me trying to implement things too fast. But also I do think it's very, very hard as a business owner to take that step back, to be creative when you've got so much moving in your business, like you will have and like I will have. I get to the end of the week sometimes and I think, just chill.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you want to do is be creative. But I think if you can build a business where you're in it and when you're out of it, you're being creative, but you actually have enough time to think creatively and then actually have a segment out of the business where you can relax, I think that's where you'll really scale.
Yeah. I think on a micro level, maybe like, as you say, like half a day just to decompress. And then after a sprint of a few weeks of work, maybe like a long weekend or something. And also I think for me, like that's more than enough.
It
like
is for me, yeah.
Like a day, half a day. But I'm guilty of that thing where it's like, if there's opportunity or if this gets done, we move the needle forward faster. And then also sometimes it's like, what's the rush?
Yeah.
What is the rush?
And I think your environment and who you spend your time with is critical as well.
Yeah.
I think you need to, like I said, I've got a friendship group for each. I've got a stag doing 7 weeks in Prague. And that's with a friendship group where if I want to go and get smashed, it will be with them. So I'm actually looking forward to that because I've not really drank this year. And I think you need a blend of that, whether you go and drink, that's fine. But where you have a group of friends where the last thing you're going to talk about is business. Like that weekend will be so refreshing for me. Because if I do talk about business, they'll just look at me and think, what are you on about?
What does that mean?
Yeah, they're not interested. So you just know. And I am actually looking really forward to that.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
On that topic of alcohol, just quickly, because I think it's becoming a bit more common now that people decide to say like, I'm sober, I'm not drinking, versus just being able to say, I will drink on the occasion that I want to, but it's not going to be very often.
Yeah.
Is that something where you feel that is what you stick to, or are you typically like, I'm alcohol free?
No, if I go for a meal, I love a cold pint, maybe one or two. I'm not alcohol free, but I am very much now, I will pick my battles with alcohol. It was one of my best friend's birthdays last weekend. Telesaurus, really good DJ on. I went for 4 hours. I had some food and free Sprites. Me 3 years ago, that's unheard of. Unheard of. It's all or nothing. Like if I'm going out to get smashed. And I think as you get older, you just get a lot more fulfillment out of little things. And I've had my years of partying. I've been to Ibiza. I've done what I've done and I've enjoyed it. And I feel like I've got my memory book from that. I feel there's not much more to give. So I would much rather be in bed for 10 o'clock, some nice food maybe, up early, walk the dog. I'm boring, I think. And
You're
I'm
not.
old.
It's so funny because at least everyone in my circle says the same thing. And there is just a turning point where, as you say, it's so funny because you work so hard to get like maybe the funds to live this lavish lifestyle. And then we're just like, oh, going to go for my nice coffee today.
Yeah. And I look forward to that more than, I'm going to listen to this DJ at this venue till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
But I think in society, it's almost like that's how you should switch off. But for me, switching off is just having some time on my own or with Claudia or the dog. And I'm happy with that now. But I think coming to peace with that is a big thing. And I think it's good that you've got that friendship group. I have, but I think this is where I still am easily led, where if I feel I'm letting somebody down, fortunately for me, my best friend at the weekend doesn't drink as much anymore, and he used to. He was a reality TV star. So you can imagine that was what his brand was built on. But he's pulled back from it now because he's done years and years of it. So it was easily understood. He was like, no worries. But if I was then at that stag do and I turned up and I said I'm sober, I would probably get laughed out the stag do and get told to get on the next flight.
Well, they're always there for when you need them, right?
So it's picking that group of friends every now and again.
But if you sat and spoke to them about the Hyrox that you got coming up, no.
Some of them do fitness, not too much. But they're good fun. And do you know what? A lot of them are really successful, but they are in that London culture where they work really hard, get smashed on the weekend. If that keeps them happy, that's sweet. I have no disagreements with that. But I think we're more of the Dubai culture now, where drinking's not that big here, is it?
No, I think it's slowing down a lot because especially with how many of us are doing different types of things with fitness and then also business, we just want to feel fresh.
Yeah.
Like it's painful to show up in a really pathetic way because you feel awful.
Exactly. I agree with that. And you said you're still in the trenches. Imagine turning up in the trenches with a heavy head.
No, I got to lead by example.
Yeah.
I can't.
And I agree with that. And I think if you are spending a lot of your time drinking and not operating at your 100%, like that will show with time. And I think that is in the back of my head as well.
What's the plans moving forwards then? Because you jumped into obviously Hyrox. So that's something that, have you given yourself enough time away from kind of competitive sport?
No, and I learnt the hard way 2 weeks ago. So I've actually got a stress fracture.
No, you don't.
I do.
Where?
So it's just on my lower tibia. And do you know how it happened? You know the 10K I told you about?
Yeah.
So after that, I could barely walk, and then I continued to run with the mindset that I've got. I was a bodybuilder, couldn't run a kilometre, so then I ran 5, then I ran 10. And it's been there ever since. So I've purchased different shoes, done gait analyses, and I got the perfect pair of shoes. I did a thorough gait, and I went for a run on Kite Beach, no pain, but after it was bulging.
Oh, God.
So I just went for an x-ray, and they was like, yeah, you've had this mumps by the looks of it. So can't run for 6 weeks. The Hyrox is in 8.
Are you going to do it?
I think so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think so. I've signed up to it. I've never backed out of anything in my life, and I'm not trying to be a Hyrox pro. It's just a new challenge, and I feel if I move that out of the calendar, I'll get slack with the training. And the circuits I'm fine at, the wall balls, the sled pulls, pushers, but the running I am terrible at. So it's going to be a long day.
You're similar to me. Like I just did the half marathon a couple of weeks back and I've got calf injury. So this morning I tested a run, did a 3K. It was okay, like 20, 30%. I felt it. But still just working on the conditioning, the strength side of things. It's good, but as you say, for race day, you'll show up and do your best. Do you think maybe it's just to assess whether you enjoy it enough to do it again?
I do enjoy it. Okay. Like I've been going to chalk on the palm and doing the classes, and
nice.
I think Hyrox I can see why it's doing so well because it's got such a community element. I've met so many people doing it. Everybody's at different levels. It's not like you're an amateur bodybuilder and you get laughed at for not being conditioned. It's a completely different setup. If you're not great at running, somebody will help you. If you're not great on the sled, somebody helps you. Wall ball, somebody steps in. And I feel with where fitness is going, people can have a really balanced diet. It doesn't matter what they look like. If you look at the best Hyrox pros, they're not in amazing shape. They're just relentless. And I think it actually bides with me a little bit more than bodybuilding now. I almost was like, why didn't I start it sooner? But here we are.
Here we are. Fit, healthy, strong as soon as your stress fracture is healed.
Yeah.
And
smiling.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't doing. So I think that's a big thing.
Wow. I'm so glad, genuinely. And I think this story is going to inspire a lot of people. What's coming up for New Gen this year?
We have a Marbella photo shoot. Never done one there. So that will be a little bit different. We're not going to go educational this time. We did in Dubai. But again, this is how I'm thinking different now. So we're going to do a shoot on the Friday, morning hike on the Saturday with some breakfast, and then into a beach club where we get some nice food. If anybody wants drinks, they can have some. Job done.
Lovely. I might pinch that idea and do a Team CBM version.
Yeah, do it.
That's awesome.
I think last year we did the Dubai one, which was a big educational seminar, and it was good. But that's when I thought, right, I'm going to give mentoring a little go, but my passion's not there. So I think now it's just having a community and a movement towards New Gen of, wow, like if we join this team, we're going to get in the best shape ever. We're going to be able to run. We're going to be able to eat nice food, socialise. And that's just a message now.
100%. If anyone wants just simply jaw-dropping results, especially for men, go take a look at New Gen's page. Yeah. Where can they find you and New Gen's details?
On Instagram, which is Ben Bray with 2 Ys _New Gen. And then New Gen's page is just New Gen on Instagram, and then myself on YouTube, which is just Ben Bray.
I'll tag them in the description box. But Ben, thank you so much. Smile looks good on you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. If you enjoyed that episode with Ben, go and listen to episode number 14 with Charlie Johnson, a multi-millionaire's cheat codes to success. 5 years ago, Charlie Johnson was just another estate agent, showing houses and chasing commissions. But fast forward to today, and Charlie has sold over $10 million worth of programs online. If you want cheat codes to become successful and wealthy, then it is a no-brainer to go and listen to that one.